I had so much fun a couple months back when we did our first virtual call, and I swear we literally needed to be pulled away because we just couldn't stop talking about, how much in common we have in the way that we help our clients.
Mm-hmm.
So much so, it's the reason we're actually recording this, right? Because we had such a great conversation in private that we thought it would be very beneficial to be able to share that conversation to you all.
It was awesome to one, see the commonalities, right, of the issues that we're facing, and two, to I think my favorite part was, and we'll talk about it, right, is that in contracts, there's what you do, Brenda, which you're in the insurance world. What I do, I'm a corporate attorney, so I'm dealing with contracts at many levels with many different industries, but a lot of these issues that we're going to talk about that come up, they apply to any kind of service provider, people that are signing contracts to sell products, right? All of this applies no matter what industry you're necessarily in. So yeah, I mean, to kind of circle back on what specifically got us all fired up, it was contracts, right? And I think the first comment that you made that made me go, oh my gosh, I deal with this too, is talking about how our clients sign contracts, and then after they sign them, they come to us and show them to us. And lo and behold, there are things there that maybe they should have come and asked us about before signing it. So the biggest pet peeve, right, is somebody coming to me with a signed contract and now wanting me to do something about it, when unfortunately, once you have signed it, you have committed to something, right? So I think that's what we were talking about. So I'll let you take the reign, Brenda, because we were talking about a signed contract, and inevitably there were insurance provisions there, requirements for insurance. So would love to hear what you see in those situations.
I think I had kind of like teased you, and I was like, so Noelle, do you like it when your clients like come with you with a signed contract? But it is true, right? Because I get the same situations where clients come to me and they're like, I need a certificate because I just signed this contract. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. What did you sign? So yeah, basically I'm a risk management consultant with the Horton Group. So this is all I do day in and day out, is help my clients with their insuring agreements, especially if there's a contract involved. And so what I look at, right, when they come to me and there is a contract involved, is the insuring requirements and the indemnity request. And for example, additional insured request, waivers of subrogation request, primary non-contributory. And I mean, do we all know what that is? Maybe not necessarily, more likely not. And that's where we come in, right? And we provide that console. And then there's a cost with adding each one of these endorsements that are being requested, right? So the other thing that I also review are the limits that are being requested.
Mm-hmm.
And Noelle, I know you'll probably touch point on this, but sometimes these contracts are boiler template.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe something pulled off Google, or now we got the Chat GPT and people are like, give me a contract, right?
Oh gosh, yeah. Don't get me started on that topic. That's a whole other topic.
But so they could ask for way more than is necessary for whatever the project is, or for whatever the situation is. One example that I like to point out is in the umbrella limit request. Sometimes you'll see a $10 million request and your carrier will only go up to 5. Right? But that's not discovered until we're actually trying to figure out what we're trying to satisfy.
Right.
And if you have to buy another 5, now we're going into specialty markets, and it's very costly to get another additional 5 on top of that. And maybe you don't need it, or maybe you do.
Right.
But those conversations that you have with your partners, that you have with your corporate attorney partner, that you have with your insurance partner, different carriers too, like they just have different capacities. Some aren't able to offer the forms that are being requested. Some are, right? If that carrier specializes in your industry, more likely, we can satisfy the requirements. But if they don't, now we have to switch the program. Your agent doesn't have any other options. Now you also have to switch a brokerage, right? And that's really difficult, especially when you're trying to win a project or a contract.
Or worse off, like I think of situations where, and going back to the topic of they signed the contract already, now they're coming to you after the fact. Well, guess what? If your insurance does not cover the limits that they're requesting, you're already in breach of that contract, right? Because you signed it and you agreed that this is what you could do and what you would do. So that's double an issue there as well.
Yeah, even if the policy itself, like something happens,
Mm.
hopefully nothing happens, but if it happens and your carrier, your program actually doesn't cover what was requested in that contract,
Mhm.
you're not off the hook.
Right, right.
Still, attached to this contract, and you are responsible. So that's why it's always such an important thing to come before the contract is signed.
Yeah, 100%. And one thing that you said, I really want to reiterate it, is that the concept of boilerplate, or like that people pull these templates offline. Maybe there's a customer you have that they reuse the same form for different projects, for different contractors that they bring on, because nobody wants to reinvent the wheel, right? If you already have a great contract prepared, you want to try to keep using it. But guess what? Maybe there is a specific kind of insurance endorsement policy, et cetera, that they're requesting it just doesn't make any sense with the project that you are entering into with this customer. And it's not that there was a malicious intent or that, that company was trying to slip something in. It just carried over from another contract. But if you don't take the time to actually send that contract to your broker, to your insurance agency to take a look at it and tell you, why do you need this coverage? This doesn't make sense. Or you don't have this coverage. Let's look into the options to get you covered. Without that conversation, you won't even realize it. You won't know. So important.
So Noelle, what kind of things are you looking at when someone does come to you with a contract?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I will say what I'm not necessarily looking at. Well, one, I'm looking at everything, but what I'm not going to do a deep dive on is this like huge page long insurance language, right? There are certain things that I will notice and I will flag for you, but I will always tell my clients, speak to your insurance broker, go talk to your insurance company and make sure that you actually can comply with what they're asking for from an insurance perspective. So that is actually one of the clauses where I rely on the expertise of their brokers to really help them through that. Otherwise, I am taking a look at the whole contract, start to finish. A few big ticket items that I think are especially important. If you don't have an attorney, which I encourage business owners to have one and work with one, at least I want you to think and walk away with these terms so that you can look at your contracts with them in mind. Number one, who's entering into the contract? If you are a business, you have a business, I presume maybe you have an LLC, a corporation, a legal entity you incorporated. If your business is the one that's providing the service or receiving the service or product, etc., in other words, your business is entering into the contract, I hope that your business is actually the named party to that contract, that your entity is named. If me and Noelle Serna own Serna Legal Services, I want Serna Legal Services to be the party to the agreement, not me individually. Why? Because the whole point of creating that legal entity is to separate the business from you, right? And we don't want you as a human individual to be responsible for everything that your business should be in that contract. You'd be amazed how often we've got the wrong parties to these agreements, the most basic thing. Other things that are big ticket items are if you're selling a service or product or you're receiving a service or product, please make that clear in your contract. Go into detail. We want clarity. We want people to be able to point back to that document and say, hey, I needed this. I didn't get this part of it, right? That's how we avoid hopefully disputes, and we have it all really outlined in this agreement. Other things, I want to be able to cancel maybe this contract. I need to know, how do I get out of it? Are there prohibitions against me canceling it early? Will I have to pay some big fee? All of that. There are mechanisms that attorneys or others can put in place to help you actually be able to negotiate canceling contracts soon or not. And if you don't have the ability, well, where else in this contract can we add protections to you? An example, if you're the one getting paid for your service or product, then if you're not getting paid on time, maybe you have the ability to stop doing the work until you get paid, right? I think that's one of the biggest pain points for a lot of service providers or people that are selling goods as well. So those are some examples. Otherwise, we're going to be looking in depth at some legal language. So I know you've talked about this indemnity obligations. I'm looking at that in great detail as well. Indemnification, limitation of liability, limitation of damages. These are all, I'm not going to even try to touch on those, but if you see those words in your contracts, please pause, please speak to somebody to help you understand what it means, because there can be huge monetary consequences to you because of these clauses. And just because we don't understand what it says doesn't mean that it doesn't mean anything. It means something. So let's ask the questions and ask them before you sign and agree to anything. There's so much more, right? I mean, the last thing I'm going to touch on quickly is there's going to be potentially this clause at the end that says this contract is governed by the laws of insert state, the state of Illinois, the state of Indiana, the state of California. That matters. Okay. So I always say, understand what law governs, because every state is going to potentially enforce different clauses differently. Some things are legal in one state that may not be in another. So you really want to understand what law governs, and of course, try to make that the law that makes most sense for your business and is more protective for your business. And I won't go into detail about what that will mean for any given client, but I think asking the question is really critical. So that is the most high level response I have ever given to that question, but it's just a few little examples of some of the things we're looking at. And there's so much more, so much more.
No, I love it. I mean, that's really important to point out. And you actually touched on two things that I kind of want to go back on when you were talking about having like an exit clause, right? Like, how do I get out of this contract and help maybe negotiate certain terms?
Yeah.
It's that negotiation piece that you and I can both do for our clients if there are things on there that just don't make sense.
Right.
Are things that I have been able to do for my clients, send them a formal letter. Hey, we need to get these things out of this contract because it doesn't apply to their business because of X, Y, and Z. Yeah. So I think negotiation is something that maybe clients don't know we can do for them on their behalf when they're entering the contract. Absolutely. We can do it. We can help. We've done it. And then the other part that you pointed out was who is entering the contract. That does tie into how we issue certificates of insurance.
Yeah.
We can't just, add anyone to a certificate of insurance based on what's on the contract. We're going to ask, well, who is this person or who is this entity? Yeah. What is in your organization? Right? And answering all those questions, it might be determined that we actually can't have them as an additional insured or named insured onto the insurance program. And now we can't satisfy the contract. And that's difficult. So yeah, agree, Molly. I mean, I could talk about this forever too.
I know. Me too. And honestly, I'm really happy though that you mentioned the point about negotiation, about knowing that you can self-advocate for yourself and you can have your professional service providers doing it for you too, because nothing breaks my heart more. And I actually had a conversation last week with a client about this. They're a subcontractor. They're trying to do a project for this big, larger contractor, great opportunity. Like, of course, we're always excited when we get that next big opportunity, right? More money, there's more opportunity for future projects, et cetera. And they feel like they can't push back. They can't try to negotiate, because what if then that potential customer, they can turn around and go find somebody else, right? And we don't want to risk that opportunity for fear of being seen as quote unquote difficult to work with, right? Or somebody that's trying to push back on certain things. But what I say is, one, it's going to cost you more money potentially down the line of not having asked the question, of not having tried to make this contract more equitable, more fair and protective to you too. So even if you got the opportunity and then you end up losing double that down the line because of something that happened, in my opinion, at least, not worth it, right? So for me, if somebody's trying to negotiate and ask questions, I view that as someone that's savvy, somebody that wants to do business right, someone that cares. I would much rather work with that person than somebody that just will sign whatever's in front of them and has no care, right, for what it is that they're doing. So that's just my 2 cents on that too.
Absolutely agree. And you know, they teach us the answer is always no if you don't ask. So
Mm-hmm.
ask, you know, and if they say
Yeah.
no, you know, but if it determines you do need to push back, then you have us to help, right? Like, I mean, it would help to have a letter coming from your attorney or a letter coming from your insurance professional. And like you were saying, if they just sign, it can be more expensive, and they might just pick them because
Mm-hmm.
their bid was lower,
Mm-hmm.
but it was lower because the full cost of that project wasn't taken into consideration. And the full cost meaning the additional cost from the insurance. And that has happened. I actually had a client that's like, oh man, I didn't know satisfying all this was going to cost so much. Now I
Mm.
know they picked me because I underbid. I'm like, yeah, you underbid. You,
Yeah. Yes, you underbid and you lost. Like you thought that this opportunity was going to be life-changing, and now instead it could even cost you some more money because you didn't talk to somebody ahead of time. Yeah, I mean it's sad to see it. And we don't want our clients to learn the lessons the hard way, right? We want you to come and have that conversation first so that we can avoid that situation for you. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And just to reiterate, we get super excited when our clients get a new opportunity. So we don't want to make this all like
Yes.
doom and doom, you know, like, but we do get excited. We want you to grow, and we will do everything in our capacity to make sure that your contract, your insurance program are strong and that can keep growing with you. And that's where those check-ins, you know, happen too. Let's talk every 3 months. Hey, what do you got going on? What projects are you working on? What do you got your eye on? Let's talk about what that's going to entail.
Mm-hmm.
Work ahead of schedule and be proactive instead of being reactive in the growth of the business.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd say some people are afraid or they think that lawyers, brokers, taxes, etc., that we're the no people, right? Or that we're gatekeeping. No, my job is not to say, no, you can't do this. My job is to say, here are the risks. Here is how we can try to work through this together, right? I'm not here to say no to you, unless, of course, you're trying to do something completely illegal. Then maybe I'll advise, no, don't do that. But otherwise, I'm here to try to brainstorm with you. I'm here to try to plan and figure out the way to make it work and to do it in a way that's protective and correct, of course. So yeah, I love that point you made because it's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Ah,
I hope everyone enjoyed our little conversation here. I mean, it was, you know, very passionate for our and as you guys can tell, we're very passionate about our understanding of contracts and these situations. So if you guys have any questions, I mean, please feel free to connect with Noelle. She is just a wealth of knowledge and she's so
ah.
sweet.
Thank you. I can only say the same for you, Brenda. Truly, you are, I know how much you love working and helping your clients, no matter who and what stage they're in. If anybody has insurance questions, they have to go to you.
Thank you. Well, until our next conversation.
We'll be back. We'll have more to talk about, I'm sure.